Hmm. Hello, welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Chris with a new album review. The subject of this one is a band known as The Body, with new album I've Seen All I Need to See. If you haven't heard them, I don't really know how I'm going to bring you up to speed, but I'm going to try anyway. So The Body are a duo from the US with members Chip King and Lee Burford, who have been making albums together since 2004. Among these are 7 solo full-length albums, 10 collaborative albums with various bands, including Thou and Full of Hell. And if you're familiar with either of those bands, especially Full of Hell, that might give you a bit of a hint as to the kind of heaviness that we're dealing with here. I'm honestly going to have a really tough time describing the sound of The Body. I'm hesitant to use the word metal, because to put this in any kind of genre doesn't feel like it will do it justice, really. I can see why people lean more towards the metal moniker than other forms of music to describe it, but even then, I can't pick a remit of metal that this really falls into neatly, as it were, which, to be honest, is kind of an exciting thing. I watched an interview in my research for this review. They were interviewing Chip King of The Body, and it was on the YouTube channel The Art of Bee, which I will of course leave a link to in the description below. And even he himself had a very hard time describing the sound of his own band. He said, maybe two people with a bleak view of the world and existence trying to amplify that through speakers, I don't really know. What's weird is I can completely see where he's coming from based on the music I've heard from this band, even though it still doesn't really help a new listener bringing you up to speed. It's a really cool interview though, I would highly recommend it if you are at all interested in this band. So prior to this album, I had heard 2 of the band's albums. I first heard No One Deserves Happiness the year it came out in 2016, and I Have Fought Against It But I Can't Any Longer, released in 2018. These were both their solo projects, not their collaborative ones. I've not heard their collaborative ones before. I have no idea how they differ, but I loved both of these albums. I even cited No One Deserves Happiness as one of my favourite albums of 2016. I love stuff that's out there, that's different, unconventional, arresting, and The Body is certainly all of that. But why haven't I delved into more? Because this band is heavy, and I don't mean in the metal sense of heavy, I mean in the emotional sense. The Body use noise along with drums and guitars and bass that are tuned disturbingly low, and with effects that will make your speakers shake from the strain, and it's loud. It doesn't sound like typical music a lot of the time, and they are unapologetically relentless in their sound. As well as the album titles I have already mentioned, other ones include I Shall Die Here or One Day You Will Ache Like I Ache. This music is bleak, very nihilistic, and very chilling at times, so be warned if you decide to dive into this or any of their previous albums, it's very intense. It's brilliant, and I'm going to try and tell you why you should listen to it, but brace yourself. So as I said, this new album is called I've Seen All I Need to See. The albums I've already heard by this band were challenging and intense already, so when I say that this new album ups the sense of doom and dread even more, that should probably speak to itself as to how extreme this album is, yet not in the extreme sense that you would normally think of when you think extreme metal. It opens with a track called A Lament, and right from the off, it's intense and puts you immediately on edge. The ominous, rich voice guiding you in, the indiscernible noise that is pounding in your ears repeatedly, all creates a greater sense of tension than most doom bands I've listened to recently. What's really clever is that near the end of the track, you can hear the hint of a melody in the background, but it's buried under thudding drums, low as hell bass, and electronic pounding that you can barely make out the whole melody. It's such a bleak listen, and this is track 1. But pointing out specific tracks in this thing feels rather pointless. It's very much a whole package kind of listen. I started by talking about the opener because that's the one that has to draw you in, so it's noteworthy in that regard. There are, however, plenty of standout moments throughout, which either gave me a very strong sense of emotional weight, or hopelessness, or just made me feel really fucking uneasy. Eschatological Imperative is an example very much of the latter. About halfway through, most of the instruments drop out, and we're left with just a slight pounding noise. I was so on edge. It was such effective tension building. A demonic voice then creeps its way in, saying, "Humans are a blight, should all be eradicated." Then the drums lead us into the ending segment with the vocals. There isn't really a massive drop of any kind to follow up all the tension that the song has built up, but just this constant build is very effective at keeping the listener on board going into the next track. The tension that was built wasn't lost, meaning that the next track doesn't have to then build that tension all the way back up again. They're already going into the next track with that tension already there, which is a really clever way to give the album a tremendous flow to it, and it's why people should listen to tracks in their entirety, not just songs listened to out of context. The track They Are Coming is fucking terrifying. It's constantly beating your eardrums with stabbing notes, if you can call them that, before relenting for a slightly off amount of time between each blast. Imagine bracing yourself for a drop, and it happens a split second later than you expect. It's really unrelenting and unsettling stuff. Adding on top Chip's vocals, it's probably the closest I've come to experiencing the horror movie genre encapsulated in music form. Chip's vocals, if you can call them that, sound like tortured screams. I have no idea what he's saying, if he's saying anything at all, but it's a big factor in what makes this band's music so disturbing and really uncomfortable. The album then concludes with Path of Failure, which is a tad more restrained, a little bit more restrained, I stress, than the previous two songs. All the tension and build-up and dread is mostly expelled in the intense tracks They Are Coming and The Handle, the Blade. This closing track feels like a desolate aftermath off the back of the chaos that just preceded it, but still there is that feeling of lingering dread and threat. And then the song kicks you off one last time as it approaches its end. This is the kind of music that I often feel somewhat hesitant to champion, really, because it's almost one of those things where I can see people might think I'm being a little bit snobbish in recommending it at all, thinking that I'm trying to sell this as some high art for proper fans of music. While I do agree that this kind of thing does to an extent require a different kind of critical view compared to most other forms of music, however, I would certainly never say, if you don't like it, you just don't get it. I never ever want to be that guy. But I'm trying really hard not to get too melodramatic about how unsettling this music was. I would wager that, hopefully not the majority, but a significant proportion of people who listen to this band via this album for the very first time would just think, what the hell is this? This is just mindless noise. Why is he getting excited about it? You know when you recommend a horror movie that really scared you, and you show it to your mates and they're not scared at all, and you just feel like a bit of a mug? It's that kind of thing I'm worried about a little bit. That being said, I find this band and this album so utterly hypnotic. If you let it take you in, and by that I mean really listen to it with minimal distractions going on, it can get under your skin and take you places. And I guess there's that snobbish side of me coming out with statements like that, but if I were to liken it to something a little bit less abstract, if you enjoy really fucked up or unsettling movies like The Killing of the Sacred Deer or Salo, then this is almost musical equivalent of that kind of thing. And if you know either of those movies, you'll likely know whether that intrigues you or if you just find that whole thing gratuitous, really. This certainly isn't for everyone, and I can totally understand why. This album is the musical representation of pain, despair, and hopelessness, and that isn't pleasant for everyone, understandably so. Or you might just find the noise irritating, which is also fair enough. But I love music that makes me feel something, whatever that might be. I love music that reminds me that at the end of all of the debates and arguments about genres, what's proper music, what's garbage, what's mainstream, what's real metal, what's not real metal, music at the end of the day is simply the art form of sound. And it's nice to be reminded of that every now and then, especially when it's with an album as haunting as The Bodies. I've seen all I need to see. It's early in the year, but I think I'll remember this one for a very, very long time.